So Bill, as a clinical immunobiologist, you work predominantly with the immune system. Can you explain to us why you take that approach?
Essentially, the immune system in humans underpins all organ functions. So when you get a symptom, it usually is coming from an organ dysfunction. If the symptom is acute, it could be just an injury to the organ or a temporary alteration of the organ. But sitting underneath all the organs is the immune system. So if you've got a chronic symptom, not just an acute symptom, if you've got a chronic symptom, it's either the organ or it's a problem with the immune system. Okay. So there's three things you really should know about the immune system. It just doesn't defend your body against pathogens, bugs. The immune system tries to create perfect environments for each of the organs. The immune system disciplines all cellular behavior. The growth of your nerve cells in your brain is governed by what's called B lymphocyte cells. So if they can't communicate well with the cells in your brain is not going to be plastic. Once you understand that the immune system is defending against chemicals trying to get into organs, stopping viruses, bacteria, fungi, various things getting into organs, and also telling the cells how to behave, then you really should be looking after your immune system throughout the whole of your life so that your body ages gracefully. Another thing to know about the immune system is that there are three areas to the immune system. Red blood cells that carry oxygen, information about the brain patterns, nutrition, to clusters of cells in the body or even individual cells. That's one part of the immune system. The second part is called your innate immune system. These leukocytes, they take between 15 and 30,000 years to code to particular chemicals. So new chemicals, new pathogens in our environment over the last 2,000 generations, our immune system has very little control over. That part of the immune system does. And then we have the third part of our immune system called the adaptive immune system, made up of lymphocytes. Now the lymphocytes adapt to new pathogens, to new chemicals, to the new things in our environment, and it assists the innate immune system. If you go back 250,000 years to the beginning of Homo sapien, our immune system was in place for humans, and it was based on the environments that we were living in. These are the emotional environments that we're living, the chemical environments, the physical environments, the pathogen environments, predator environments, and for humans, the emotional, the social, and the intellectual environments. If you happen to, in this present day, live very close to those environments that humans have been ecologically set up to, your innate immune system would do all the work, or almost all the work, and your adaptive immune system would have lots of reserves sitting there, just in case something new comes in. But the further away from optimal environments that you live, the more work has to be done by your adaptive immune system. So if you're in the wrong emotional environments, it puts more load on the adaptive immune system. If you're eating foods that have got chemicals that we're not genetically adapted to, then the adaptive immune system puts more effort and energy into trying to neutralize these. So when people end up with chronic health problems, usually it's in their lifestyle. It's either they're in emotional environments that are stressing them, they're eating the wrong foods that are where the immune system can't recognize the chemicals. They may be in pathogen environment like fungus. They might be living in houses that have got too much fungus and it's overloading the adaptive immune system. So once you understand that if you do have chronic conditions, if you change your lifestyle from living away from the optimal lifestyle that we're genetically coded to, and you move back into that lifestyle, it will unload the adaptive immune system, and that means then it won't give inappropriate responses, or it will be able to handle the disruptions in certain organs and pull them back into balance. The third thing to know about the immune system is that when you're born, your innate immune system is ready to go. It's coded to all of these things. But your adaptive immune system has no information, or virtually no information in it. Now, that's fine if your mum's living in optimal human environments. Then when the baby's born, its innate immune system will handle everything, from the emotions right through to the chemical environments. But if mum is living outside of that in different emotional environments, or she's exposed to certain pathogens or chemicals, then her adaptive immune system will be trying to take care of it. Now there's a little chemical called transfer factor, which will record what the adaptive immune system takes on within about 6 weeks. And these chemicals, the transfer factor, are mobile and move through the body and allow for quick responses of the immune system against specific bugs and chemicals and various things that come into the body. But it does concentrate in the colostrum. So when a baby's born and feeds on the colostrum, it gets the information about the mother's adaptive immune system and what it's actually coding to. And this then, within 24 hours, the baby's immune system ramps up to look for these things as a defense to assist the baby's innate immune system. Mm-hmm. Now this, on average, goes up and down, but continues to grow over about 14 years. So by the time you're in your early teenage years, your adaptive immune system is so complex, interrelating viruses, bacteria, fungi, various emotional environments, and it creates what's like an internet highway of cross-relating these things. And when it does that, it can really support the innate immune system, even if you're not living within optimal human environments. And you see this with the young and beautiful and between 14 and about 35. This is the time when you can really abuse yourself, you can drink, you can take drugs, you can be out all night long. And the immune system will still support the organs and you'll still repair day to day to day. This is the reproductive age for women. This is Olympic athletes. This is when people really have a dynamic nature about themselves. But at about the age of 35, the adaptive immune system will start to go down. Now, if you're in the right place at the right time and you don't really injure the immune system, you'll age gracefully. And you'll age probably through to 100 years of age, maybe die in your sleep, and you've rarely had any symptoms because the organs are still functioning well, because both the innate immune system and the adaptive immune system are still supporting all the organ function. But unfortunately, in our day and age now, with our civil living, there are lots of chemicals, lots of bugs that people have to put up with, lots of emotional environments that really stress the adaptive immune system. And people usually get scarring in their adaptive immune system. And it usually scars and goes down by stages till you get to about 80 years of age, and the average person dies at about 80 years of age. That is 50% of the population die at 80, but 50% go on to live longer because our longevity is 100 to 108 in humans, in our genes. Now, to let you know what a scar is in the adaptive immune system, just consider that you're living in the wrong emotional environment, you're eating any sort of indulgent foods, you're picking up flus and colds and other pathogens all the time, you're in a chemical environment where these things are getting through your skin, you're handling petrochemicals or spraying insect sprays everywhere. And so you've only got this much buffer left in your adaptive immune system. Then you're in a car accident and it shortens it. You're sent to hospital and the food there sometimes is a bit questionable, so down it goes. You might pick up Staph aureus, down it goes. Your family may come in and you have this argument and you get a scar in the adaptive immune system. So what happens? Within a week or so you come out of hospital and you've got a skin rash, and the skin rash doesn't go away. It just stays there. 3 months later it's still there. It just won't go away because you've got a scar. So you go along to your doctor, and your doctor, because he has to work with the symptoms, he doesn't have enough time to really get underneath things. What he'll do is then prescribe you a drug for your symptom. Mm-hmm. And if it keeps suppressing the symptom, you'll have to take that drug for life. But if you're not addressing what's sitting underneath, your adaptive immune system can scar again. Now, then you'll get another scar and you'll get another symptom. So if you go along to the doctor again, he'll give you another drug. Or maybe he'll give you an operation. And then later on you get another scar and you get another symptom that won't go away, and he gives you another drug. And after a while you just go down and down and you gather more and more symptoms, and you start taking more and more drugs, or you start having operations as your body's breaking down, because your adaptive immune system is still trying to cope with something that you haven't addressed. Now I'll put this in another context. Let's say we're in Canberra, let's say you're outside Canberra, you buy a block of land, there's no water on it, and somebody says drill here and the water will be okay. So you drill down, up comes the water, and it's lovely and tasty and it's clear, and you don't get it checked. Let's say it's got a chemical in it, a particular chemical that affects your body, but you can't taste it. After 2 years of drinking this, you find you've got this heart condition. So you go along to the doctor and they almost panic and they say, we're going to have to put a stent in and we're going to put a pacemaker and put you on these chemicals for the rest of your life. You go back home and you start drinking the water again. And then you develop another symptom because you have not addressed what is actually really affecting the adaptive immune system. If you can find out what's really affecting the immune system, then you can overcome this. I'll give you one more example. Celiac sprue. Celiac disease. 48% of Australians have the gene for celiac disease. But only 3% of these ever get celiac sprue in the life. Most of those people, the vast majority, can eat gluten until they're 100 years of age and then die in their sleep and have absolutely no problem. That's because their adaptive immune system is seeing the gluten for the defense chemical it is and neutralizing it. But when you get a scar right in that area, you may go under an emotional stress, you might get hepatitis, you might get some bad infection, and then your immune system, adaptive immune system, will scar right where this gluten is in its DNA. And then if you present the body with the gluten, the immune system doesn't know what to do with this, creates what's called a molecular mimicry response, attacks the bowel, and your life will be shortened. 100% of celiacs die early if they keep taking gluten. And if they remove gluten, perfectly healthy.
Okay. And just so, using some of those examples that you just spoke about, so for example, the person that's in the car accident that presents them with a skin rash, using your approach, how would you determine the scar and how to treat it to, stop the skin rash from occurring?
There are a number of techniques that we will use. One of the principal ones is going to be electrodermal testing to get underneath to find out comparatively, how the organs are functioning. We can map the immune system, the adaptive immune system, and find out where the scarring is using particular protocols that come out of electrodermal testing.
And is there a common theme that triggers? So if an adaptive immune system has gone down and down and down until it creates a scar which then presents with, for example, a skin rash, is the trigger common? So is it normally food, or is it, can it be anything?
Well, no. Once you understand that around 80% of all immune activity occurs on the gastrointestinal tract, you have to look at foods. This is why people in the world know that foods have some health benefits when they shift foods around. I'm not talking nutrition now. I'm talking about those foods that create problems for the immune system. So that's either foods that have got heavy metals and toxicity in those, like DDT used to be, or it's pathogens like parasites that might be in meats that you eat, or it could be salmonella bacteria that's in eggs, or it could be defense chemicals that are in plants. Okay, that's the vegetable salads, fruits, nuts, seeds, herbs and spices that we eat. These are going through the gastrointestinal tract. The immune system is confronted with these. They can stress the immune system, and then if you get scarring, then the immune system doesn't see these correctly, and it creates inappropriate responses anywhere along the gastrointestinal tract. And then you'll get swelling, a lymphedema response, for example, if it's in the small intestine and colon, or if it's in the tummy, you'll get all sorts of spasming in the stomach. If it's up in the esophagus, you'll get spasming in the esophagus, etc.
Just referring back to your point that 80% of the immune sort of related activities in the gastrointestinal tract, how does that relate to the diet and eating trends that we see a lot of nowadays?
Okay. There are lots and lots and lots of diets out there, as you understand, and some people suggest that maybe we're more of a carnivore. Some suggest that we should be a vegetarian, a herbivore. As a biologist, I was trained to believe that you look at your gastrointestinal tract, and from that you can tell what humans actually eat. There are several ways to do this. But when you look at our gastrointestinal tract, it's unique to us. We're different from all other primates. In fact, we're different to all other animals in our gastrointestinal tract. You see, when you look at our jaw goes from side to side. No carnivore's jaw goes from side to side. So that suggests then that maybe we've got some herbivore connection. Our teeth aren't set up to be carnivores. We don't have fangs, and we don't have grinding molars. The way our tongue and our cheek is, and the very, very small mouth that we've got compared to herbivores and carnivores. In biology, they say that all of this area up here is set up, genetically has been selected and pushed towards of the particular physiology we have has been set up through cutting foods using sharp flints and through cooking foods. We're the only animal that really cuts food up and cooks it. Okay, and this means plants and animals. So we've got this structure from that. When you come down to our gastrointestinal tract, we don't have multiple stomachs. We don't have convoluted stomachs. We've got a round stomach like a carnivore, but we don't have the pH of a carnivore. We don't have the enzymes of a carnivore. For example, a dog's got a pH that goes down to 1, so they can bury a bone and 6 weeks later come back, they can eat the bone and they don't get poisoned. We try that, we get poisoned. We don't have the stomach of a carnivore, but we don't have the stomach of a herbivore. We don't go into the pH range really of a herbivore consistently. And another thing to think about is that if you have a child and they eat meat and vegetables and then they vomit that up after half an hour, you don't see chunks of meat coming up. What you'll do is usually find undigested vegetables coming up, because our stomach does dissolve meat and protein and fats reasonably quickly compared to vegetables. The more you cook the vegetables, the more the stomach is able to handle it. When we have a look at our small intestine for our body length is very, very long. Carnivores, for their body length, they have a shorter small intestine. And then herbivores have a really short intestine. The primary function of the small intestine is uptake fats and proteins, or cooked plants it will uptake, because the cooking unravels the proteins and glycoproteins that are in the plants, and then we can uptake them through the small intestine. And there's sugars uptaken through the small intestine as well. So, for example, when fats and proteins come out of the stomach and go into the small intestine, they slow down so that the small intestine will uptake most of them. Many people think that meats, what they putrefy in the gut, there is that term. That's not correct. They do slow down to go through the gut. Between our small intestine and our large intestine, there should be a cecum. A cecum is a chamber that ferments plants and it unravels them. We have a vestigial one. We don't have a cecum anymore. So that means when you eat uncooked plants that go past the tummy, through the small intestine, they don't get unraveled because there is no chamber to ferment them. So then they pass into the colon and usually will pass out of the body as unprocessed vegetable matter. All herbivores have really good cecums, or they have multiple cecums. Like a cow has 3 cecums in a tummy. A horse is a hindgut fermenter, whereas a cow is a foregut fermenter. When we come to our colon, we've got a very short colon, but unlike a carnivore, we've got convoluted colon, which makes us unique then. So once you start looking at the anatomy, or if you like, physiology of our gastrointestinal tract, it is not like any other animal. It is genetically adapted to cooking our food. It is genetically adapted to cutting our food. So you should cook your foods and you should cut them up really well.
And so, and also eat meat and vegetables. What's the ideal human diet from a biological perspective?
It depends on your age and your health. I'll give you that answer. Everyone is unique. It depends on the immune function. The immune function is unique. We can generalize. So we've got our 2 food types. We've got our animal products, which will be eggs, will be dairy, if you like, milk, breast milk, and we've got all sorts of flesh and organs that we eat. On the other hand, you've got all your vegetable products. Our body is set up to eat both. As long as we cook our vegetables, we can denature poisons and toxins in them, and then we can eat those without having health problems. Some plants, even though they're poisonous and toxic, our immune system is coded to them, and our liver has enzymes to denature them. And so we call those salads. But out of the several 100,000 plants in this world, we can only eat a handful. Most of them are far too poisonous and too toxic, even when we cook them. For example, gluten. You can char a piece of toast, but when a celiac eats a charred piece of toast, they still get an immune response to it. So cooking doesn't remove all of the toxins, all of the poisons, but throughout millennia, our ancestors have found various plants that they can cook and know that they're not going to have a health problem with it. Or they can take it slightly raw and not have a health problem. As you get older, you should be cooking your foods more. Just think of your granny. Your granny would cook the buggery out of plants. Okay. You think of children. Little babies, when you're first introducing plants to them, you have to cook them really, really well. Otherwise, the baby will get poisoned. It's the baby is poisoned. It's not to do with them able to digest it. It's just that these plants are too poisonous. So you cook them really well. You make sure that the meats that you give very young people and very old people are really free of any bugs, any pathogens. And you cook those pretty well also, because they don't have the array of digestive enzymes, usually when they're very young and when they're very old. Okay, so we've got a group of people right in the middle that can eat raw plants and get away with it, that can eat cooked plants, and that can eat meats and eggs that aren't quite that good, because their adaptive immune system is taking care of all those problems.
And that's the people from 14 to 35 that you...
Yes, around about that on average. But when you start to get scarring and the immune system scars to a pathogen like a salmonella, if you've got scarring to salmonella and you started eating raw eggs, you can die. It'll just poison you because your immune system can't identify that. Or if you're eating a plant that's got particular chemicals in it that the immune system's got scarring to, and you keep putting that in, the immune system has all sorts of problems and will create your autoimmune responses, and also will take up lots of resources, and you won't be able to address cancers as well. Okay. You won't be able to detox as well. You won't be able to find that your organs don't function as well, and you start getting symptoms from swollen livers, your tummy upsets, your skin starts to change, your bones start to get osteoporosis. Your brain is not plastic and can't handle and change things. So food becomes really, really important as you age and as you get injury to your immune system.
And if you develop a chronic illness like an autoimmune or chronic fatigue or a cancer, that's obviously a pretty big trigger to address your immune system. But what can you do, particularly if you're sort of around the 35 years plus age, to start looking for triggers that your immune system is not functioning fully?
It depends whether the triggers are from industry, like in petrochemicals, or the easy one is if it's in a food. Okay, and many people aren't in industry. They're not hairdressers. They're not working in biological laboratories and handling all sorts of chemicals and things. If you're a person who's not around these and you do have chronic symptoms developing, one of the first things I would suggest you do is a cleanse. Okay, when you cleanse, you've got to remove certain foods from the body. And you take a whole bunch of natural medicines to do it, and bentonite and various other things. So you change the eating style. Now, if your symptoms disappear during that time, it could be due to the medicines, etc. But more than likely it's going to be due to the foods. When you reintroduce the foods, if the symptoms come back, then you go, okay, I have a problem with these foods. More than likely it's going to be a problem with plant foods, not animal foods, unless it's dairy. Okay. So dairy on one side, where as we age, when you get to your late 30s, early 40s, you'll find that your body is not producing lactase. Okay, lactase peaks at about the age of 4 and then goes away. That means when you have dairy products, it can't cleave the lactose. The lactose then will create diarrhea and you get loose stools. So your stools will start to vary. As you get a little bit older also, because of the cow's milk has more than 50 times more casein in it than breast milk does, it stresses the immune system. So as we get older and the immune system starts to get microscarring, you may find that you get an allergy to the protein in milk, the casein, which will give you constipation. When it gives you constipation, then there'll be hip pains and back pains and leg pains, and you'll feel bloated, and it'll just feel awful down below. Some people get both of these responses, and they still take the dairy products. They'll take milk, they'll take cheese, they'll take these things. And what happens is they get variable bowel movements. Over a number of days they're constipated, and then they've got diarrhea, and then they're constipated again, and they're bloating up, and they get hip pains and back pains. It's all because they're eating the dairy products. And it appears as if the stools sometimes are okay, and sometimes they're not, depending on the volumes of these they eat. So yeah, dairy, That's one thing that must be looked at as you get a bit older. It's an easy thing to remove. You can move over to sheep's products or goat's products, which don't have as much casein, and our body metabolizes the lactose in those slightly differently. That's why many people move over to these and find they can still take them as an entertaining food.
Okay. Should I talk about the trial?
Yeah, I thought that's where you were going. You started going there and then we got lost in theory.
Okay.
Maybe you can say something. So, you know, so how can people, after they've done a cleanse and they reintroduce food and they find that the symptoms come back, how can they work out what food are causing their problems?
Okay.
And then you say personal food trials to find your signature diet and then live forever.
So if someone has done a cleanse and symptoms have gone away, they're feeling amazing, they've got energy, vitality, sleeping well and so on, and then they sort of revert back to their normal diet and the symptoms come back, how are you supposed to work out exactly what food is triggering it? So if you don't want to remove an entire food group, for example dairy, or you don't want to remove all the plants, how do you work out if it's one or two things that might be triggering the symptoms?
You can have it tested to find out if it's a simple allergy response. You have two types of allergies, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 allergies are within a few seconds to a couple of hours. Your type 2 allergies are usually 70 to 75% of people are 2.5 days to 10 days delay before the symptoms come on. Okay, so if you go back to your normal diet and you find that you reintroduce a food and within an hour you've got your symptom, then you can say, well, I think it was this food, and you can isolate it fairly quickly. But if it's got a type 2 response and it's days later and you've put lots of foods in, it's very, very difficult for you to figure out what's going on. And this is what hamstrings people. They know they've got a food problem, but they can't figure it out. Okay, so what you need to do then is either, depending on if you've got autoimmune disease, you need an immunocompromised food diet protocol to run through. Or if you're a person who doesn't have autoimmune diseases, you may just want to do what's called a signature diet trial, a signature trial, where you find out those specific foods that your body can't cope with, and it's only for you. It's not a join the club diet, it's a unique diet you figure out for you. It can be in your animal products, it can be in your plant products. In my experience, probably 80% of the time, or maybe even 85% of the time, it's plant products. Okay.
And so running people through a food trial, so a signature or an immuno-cleanse, how do you do that? What does that look like?
There's specific protocols that you've got to use, and we can give people those protocols and we can help them through the trials. Usually you need to be tutored because it's fairly complex. One of the things that you have to do is keep a note on your reactions. So you can keep a little bit of a diary if you want, but it's essential that you keep graphs, and you need sometimes controls to alter the graphs. We've got all of that, and we just help people with that, take them through, and then they isolate these. Then once they figure out, okay, I've got this problem with this food, what do I do? Some people will determine that they still want the food. Well, in a case like that, we've got no problems. We send them along to their doctor and they can get some medicines to dampen down the symptoms they get from eating the food. Okay. Otherwise, what you can do is decide not to eat the food and substitute another food in for that. So if it is one plant food, for example, if you have a problem with rice, okay, the idea then is you remove the rice out of your diet, you've tested it, you know that it gives you a problem, so then you go and get quinoa. And you cook quinoa for 10 minutes, not 3 minutes, substitute that into your diet, and all of a sudden you can still eat rice-like food. Okay.
And roughly how long does a food trial take?
Well, because immune symptoms on a type 2 allergy response can keep going for up to 5.5, almost 6 weeks in some very few people, but it will, we make sure that our trials are up to 6 weeks. Okay. But understanding that most people will get, when I'm talking most people, more than 50% of people will get changes within the first 2 weeks.